Hey guys, this is your host Thomas Tyree here from On the Hot Podcast. Today, this will be episode 254 for you guys today. And to kick off this week's episode, I'll be sharing my own personal list of my favorite March Madness tournament runs in March Madness history. So I have 3 teams on the list. 2 of these teams went on to win national titles in their respective years. And then I have one Cinderella team as my favorite March Madness runs of all time. So team number 1, we'll start off with the Florida Gators. Now the 2025 Florida Gators team, that team is special to me being a Florida Gators fan, and it's one of my favorite March Madness runs in March Madness history. I mean, that was a very special team that we had a year ago, and it breaks my heart that we didn't go back-to-back this year, but looking back at the 2025 National Championship run, it was very special, very historic for the school and the program, and every round that the Florida Gators played in that year, other than rounds 64 and the Sweet 16, every game was an absolute cinema, absolute nail biter all the way into the end. Straight elite basketball that we've seen for the Florida Gators. And look at round 32 when we matched up against UConn. Remember, UConn, they were the reigning defending back-to-back national champions, went on to win the national title and a dominant run back in 2023, and then they won it back-to-back in 2024. So they were out for vengeance to go on a three-peat. And we had a hard matchup against the Huskies. We were the number 1 seed last year, and they were the 8th or 9th seed in the region that year. And it was a close game. There were several lead changes, especially in the second half. And at one point in the game, the Florida Gators were in principal's office trouble in the second half because they trailed by 12 points in the second half against UConn. But they found a way to win that game and advance to the Sweet 16. And when we got to the Sweet 16, that matchup between the Florida Gators and the Maryland Terps, everybody thought that matchup would feed families in the Sweet 16. Thought that would actually be one of the best games in March Madness that year. But that wasn't the case. And the Florida Gators had their way with the Maryland Terps. And that team was pretty special. I mean, they had Derek Queen, who was a lottery pick drafted by the New Orleans Pelicans that summer of last year. And we cruised past them, had a dominant statement victory against one of the best remaining teams left in the dance. And when we got to the Elite Eight, when we got to Final Four, when we got to the national championship, man, I was on the edge of my seat for all those games because those were true nail biters that the Florida Gators were in. Several true crucial situations that the Florida Gators faced. They had to overcome a lot of adversity, win a national title in those 3 games. So looking at the Elite Eight, when we played against Texas Tech, the Florida Gators were actually trailing by 11 points with 3 minutes left in the game against Texas Tech. That was a very scary game. And a few missed free throws by Texas Tech, and followed by a few clutch 3-point shots made by the Florida Gators, made by Thomas Hughes and Walter Clayton III, helped us go on an 18-5 run to close out the game in the Elite Eight and help us punch our ticket to the Final Four to play against the Auburn Tigers. And then we were in a dogfight against Auburn in the Final Four. We were very familiar with them in the SEC Conference that year. And then we went on to play Houston in the national championship game. And Houston did a really good job. Calvin Sampson and company did a very good job game planning for our best player at the time, our best closer. And Walter Clayton III really didn't have his best offensive game, but it didn't matter. The Florida Gators had to fight through adversity, get back in the lead. And in the final 2 minutes of the game was really special. And we won another nail-biter against Houston, defeated them by 2 points to win our first national title since, 2007, 2008. So it was a long time coming for the Florida Gators, but I think that 2025 national championship run was very special. And it's one of my favorite runs of all time. Ooh, we're going to throw back the clock here. Something I seen when I was growing up. And that's the 2011 run that the UConn Huskies went on. Now, the 2011 UConn Huskies team that won a national championship, that team, what they went through, that's one of my favorite March Madness runs of all time. They were led by a young, tremendous guard at the time at Kimball Walker. Like, Kimball Walker put UConn on his back and carried them to a national championship back in 2011. That's one of my favorite runs of all time. And UConn actually that year they won 5 Big East tournament games and dominated 6-game run to a national championship. So imagine that. That's an 11-game winning streak in a matter of 28 days. 5 straight tournament games, and you got to win 6 games to win a national title in March Madness. So that's a dominating run in a matter of 28 days in college basketball. But UConn that year, they went on a legendary run, and they had some help to go on a legendary run and get past some legendary coaches in their path. Like, they had Jim Byam in their way. They had John Calipari in their way, Brad Stevens, Rick Pitino. UConn defeated all those legendary coaches in order to get a national title back in 2011. And the team had some NBA talent. They had Kemba Walker, they had Shabazz Napier, they had Jeremy Lamb. Like, this team and several others, this team was loaded with some talent. And Kemba Walker was a killer, man, at the time at UConn. He averaged 23 points per game at UConn back in 2011. And this UConn team honestly had no business winning it all that year. Like, they lost their 7 out of their final 11 games that close in the regular season, to close out the regular season before the conference tournament games began and then, of course, March Madness. But that's an impressive run that the 2011 UConn team went on. And look at it, Kemba Walker was the perfect highlight reel in March. And it's sad that once he got to the NBA, he was a phenomenal player in the league, but it's sad that most of his prime years got wasted for years in Charlotte with the Charlotte Hornets. The front office, Michael Jordan, and the company did not know how to put talent around him. They really didn't know how to draft well either with their first round selection. So Kemba Walker's years in his prime were just wasted, and it took him till 2018, 2019 to finally get on a contending team with the Boston Celtics. But that time, prime Kemba Walker was fading away, and he never was the same player that he once was when he was at UConn and with the Charlotte Hornets. So it's sad that his NBA career, he was stuck on a bad team and not competing for championships like he was in college. But the UConn 2011 Huskies team was really good. So I'm going to put them there. And last but not least, I'm going to put the 2022 St. Peter's team. Now, this is in recent memory as well, just 4 years ago. Now, the 2022 run that St. Peter's went on was one of my favorite March Madness runs of all time. Yeah, they didn't win a national championship, but the fact they went to the Elite Eight as a 15th seed, the only team in March Madness men's history to go all the way to Elite Eight as a 15 seed, that's very impressive, very remarkable for the work that they've done back in 2022. Still one hell of a run. And you're looking at the St. Peter's team compared to all the other teams in the country that were a part of March Madness that year. They had less resources. They were a smaller school that got put on the map, but they still somehow, some way, still found a way to go very deep and go into the tournament to be one of the final 8 teams to compete for a national championship that year. But it all started, St. Peter's Cinderella run all started in round 64 when they played against Kentucky. Remember, Kentucky was the 2nd seed in that region that year. And myself, I picked Kentucky to go to the Final Four that year. Why I did it, I don't know. But I picked them to go to the Final Four. My bracket was already in principal's office trouble that early in 2022 in the first round. But they upset Kentucky around 64, won the game into overtime, and that was actually the beginning of the end of the John Calipari era in Kentucky, because a year or so later he got fired, released from the team, and that's why he's with Arkansas right now as we speak. But with this St. Peter's team, they went on a deep run that year. They defeated Murray State in round 32. I think they were on one hell of a winning streak. Murray State was as well at the time. So they defeated a red-hot Murray State team in round 32. They defeated Purdue in the Sweet 16. The Purdue team that had some NBA talent, Jaden Ivey and Zach Edey, they gave them one hell of a day at the office that day and the Sweet 16, because they forced them to turn over the basketball 15 times in that loss to St. Peter's. So St. Peter's, they were one hell of a team, man. Very special run, very special Cinderella run. One of the best teams, honestly, in the country. They just weren't known around the country, and they got put on the map in a big tournament. That's why March Madness is one of the most spectacular tournaments, one of the hardest tournaments to win a national championship in, because you don't know what the hell to expect out of any team that's a part of the dance. But this St. Peter's team, they were one hell of a team. They forced turnovers, and they played some ugly brand of basketball, like forcing turnovers, and they controlled the pace of the basketball, playing a slow tempo type of offense to cause havoc to the opposing teams. And they had a good squad, man. Like Shaheen Holloway, their head coach at the time, did a good job coaching this team. And they had some clutch players down the stretch of Darryl Banks and Doug Edert that led them down the stretch all the way to the Elite Eight as well. So they didn't win a national title like those 2 other teams that I just mentioned, but that's still one hell of a run that they'll never forget. That school will never forget. So those are my 3 favorite March Madness runs in March Madness history.